Okay, grade 8s. I said I would do a heart dissection for you today, so that is what I'm gonna do. Just a reminder, let's take a look at this model. This is a sheep's heart, by the way. Let's take a look at the model just to remind you of the parts of the heart that you need to know. So just a reminder that the top chambers here are called the atrium. This is the right atrium and this is the left atrium. And then the bottom chambers are called the ventricles, and that's the right ventricle and this is the left ventricle. So atrium receive blood either from the body or from the lungs, and ventricles pump blood away from the heart. Okay, the right side receives blood from the body and it's deoxygenated. The left side is oxygenated and it receives blood from the lungs. So if you look at this heart right here, okay, this flat side is the left side, and this curved side, okay, is the right side. So the left side actually kind of dips a little bit in front of the right side and dips down a little bit further. So this is actually, hearts all look different, so this is actually a pretty good sample that shows that flat side. They don't always look as nice. Now, just before I dissect this, you can see some different tissues. So the darker tissue is muscle tissue, that's ventricle tissue. There's fatty layers on top. And the heart itself would be usually encased in like connective tissue called pericardium. And it's full of fluid, so there's like a hydraulic pump in between the heart itself and the connective tissue. That's just for protection and it makes it pump more efficiently. You also have blood vessels. So these are your main coronary arteries. Okay, so you've got the blood supply that fuels the actual heart itself. It comes off the aorta. So if you look at the model here, you've got these arteries that actually come off the main blood vessels, and these are your coronaries. So there's coronary arteries and veins, and then there are main blood vessels that are connected to the coronaries called your circumflex arteries, and those feed the different chambers. So if you know anyone who's ever had like bypass surgery, what's happened there is the blood vessels have become clogged inside the heart. There's 4 main blood vessels because there's 4 main chambers that need blood supply. And the vessel's been clogged, and what's happened is we've grafted an artery or a vein from another part of the body. It usually comes from a femoral artery from your femur, or it comes from your lower thoracic vertebrae, so your back, like the lower back, all right? So we pull arteries or veins from there, and then we actually connect them to the blood vessels in the heart itself, and then we cut off the clogged portion of the artery, and we bypass that clogged portion of the artery with the new blood vessel that we've put in there. So you could have a single bypass surgery, which would be just a single artery. You could have double, triple, or quadruple bypass. So if you have quadruple bypass surgery, that means all 4 of your main arteries in the heart are clogged. So that's a really, really unhealthy heart. And generally that happens because of lifestyle-based disease, right? So this is the heart. You've got your main blood vessels that feed off the top. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut a cross section. So I'm going to cut this kind of right down the middle. I'm going to show you what is inside. Okay, maybe some of you do some hunting and you've eaten the heart before. If it's a healthy heart, it's a very healthy meal for you. It's lean, and the meat tastes pretty good actually too. Okay, so I cut this right down the middle, right? So this part and this part is the same chamber. This is also the same chamber. chamber right here, right? If I was to put that together. So you can see the muscles. This is the ventricular tissue. That's muscular. This separates the two. So this big piece right here is separating the two chambers. So there's a chamber and there's a chamber, and these two are the same chamber and these two are the same chamber, right? So I cut right through the middle of those chambers. So this part of the heart that separates the ventricular chambers is called the septum. You can see this white tissue here. This is fat on top of the heart. And then you've got these tendons here. Okay, these are called chordae tendineae. And what they do is they open and close the heart valves. So let me just open this up a little bit more. Okay, so this is the chordae tendineae, and it's connected to some muscle papillae right here. So these are little tendons that open and close heart valves. Now this membrane right here, we're not going to talk a ton about this in grade 8 because it's not, you don't need to know it for grade 8, but you will learn it in high school. But it's cool to see. So this membrane right here, this right here is a valve that separates the atrium from the ventricles. And if you look inside the heart wall here, you can see how muscular it is. I actually cut right through the valve. When I open this up, this is the other valve that separates the atrium from the ventricle. Okay, so when the atrium are filling, the valves are closed, going into the ventricles, and then the atrium pump. When the valves open, the blood from the atrium goes into the ventricles, and then these valves open and close. Those are called atrioventricular valves, and the valves in your heart gives you the heartbeat sound. Okay, so when the valves open and close, you have atrioventricular valves that open, and then when the ventricles empty into the aorta or into the pulmonary artery, there's another set of valves called semilunar valves that also open and close. So that lub-dub portion of the heart, the lub portion is the atrioventricular valves moving, and the dub portion is the semilunar valves moving. You'll learn that more in Bio 20 though. One thing that we should understand, so again, if we look at the heart, this is the flat part, and then this is the twisted part. So if I actually look at which side of the heart is what, okay, you can see this really muscular septum wall. So the right ventricle, this kind of goes, this is the left ventricle right here, okay? It's the flat side of the heart. The septum is really, really thick here, and that's feeding the left ventricle. Even though this side of the heart is larger, okay, this is part of the right ventricle, but the chamber itself is kind of cut open right here. It's actually quite a bit larger. All right, so this is the right ventricle side, and this is the left ventricle side. Now, if you see the atrium here, this is actually looking into the left atrium. This part right here has no muscles along it. It's like this smooth muscle tissue, or smooth fatty tissue, right? It's because the atrium are not muscular. They don't actively pump, they just fill. This is the other atrium right here. Okay, so it looks very, very different from the inside of the ventricles. Okay, so those are your different chambers, and again, this is a sheep's heart, but the heart itself kind of sits right in the middle here. All right, right in the middle of the body. Now this is a pretty big sheep. The heart is usually the size of a fist. So this was a pretty decent sized sheep. So anyway, those are the main parts that you guys need to know. That was a little bit of a review for you. I think that's it. I would look at this when I would look at this when you are reviewing my slides as well, just as reinforcement. So I think we'll sign off with that dissection, and you guys can have a good weekend.